Any guess? Over 50,000, and about 40% get in nationally. So obviously that's around 20,000. We're on par with the acceptance rates here at UC San Diego. Our students are high caliber. They can get in. The main thing is you need to apply when you are ready. Oftentimes people are applying a little bit too early. They're not quite ready. They need all the experiences. These are all the pieces of the pie they need. So it starts with GPA and MCAT. That is the most important thing. It's the first screen. After that, it still is considered holistic review. So they want to see research. They want to see clinical experience, which is volunteering at a hospital. They want to see some sort of leadership. How many of you who are students here have done some sort of leadership position? Okay, a few. This is something that's really important. They need to know you've been in charge of something. You've taken initiative. You've run an event, coordinated something. That's really important. It also shows maturity. Service. So service is also very important. Service is not just volunteering. It's actually working with specific communities. So it's underserved communities, disadvantaged communities, low-income communities. How do they know, how do med schools know you care about people? Because you do stuff like that. That is almost mandatory. I would say that is, even if they don't say that, it's so important to demonstrate that you have compassion and empathy. Letters of rec, personal essay. I'm going to go into these in a little more detail, but I just wanted to show you the overarching theme of what it takes to be competitive for med school. In addition, this isn't all, this is just part of it, you also need to be familiar with the 15 core competencies. So for those of you who are interested in med school, the 15 core competencies, you can Google it. It's things like service orientation, cultural competence, critical thinking, those types of things, capacity for improvement. You should familiarize yourself with the competencies and be able to provide an example of how you meet every competency. So a lot of these competencies you'll probably have through your classes, like the critical thinking, the science and reasoning, and things like that. But there's some other competencies that you will get through your experiences. So just be aware of that. And then I also like to add in the other important piece is your X factor. It's sort of your superpower, whatever it is that makes you a unique applicant. This is hard. It doesn't mean you have to have one like a gold medal or anything that large. You just need to really understand what is it about you that sets you apart, what makes you a unique applicant. And you should have the evidence to support that as well. So again, this is just a quick snapshot overview, and then we're going to go into like a little bit more of a deeper dive. So generally, if you are how many of the students in the room or the parents who have sons or daughters are working with juniors and seniors? You have, okay. So for the juniors and seniors, you'll probably have done this already, but generally these are all the prereqs you need to prepare for med school. Now, just so you know, a lot of med schools don't care about prereqs anymore. It's more about these are preparing you for the MCAT. Of course, they're preparing you for med school too, but mostly it's for the MCAT. So you don't want to take the MCAT without taking all of these classes because that's what it's preparing you to do. So if you're a bio major, this is really easy. If you're a non-bio major, that's okay. You just need to make sure you're getting into these classes. Generally, you want to be in Gen Chem your first year, lower division biology, calculus. That's like the standard. You want to be in OChem your second year. That's a nice way to set you up. Because all of these classes are prereqs for everything else. And the minute you're off sequence, it extends your timeline. It's not a bad thing, but I want you to know that so you can decide, is that okay? That could affect how many gap years you're going to take. So biology and lab, Gen Chem lab, OChem lab, calculus, statistics, biochem, physics. Also for the MCAT, we recommend, if you have time, I know you all have so much free time, You could take Gen Psych and Soc 70, which sociology and psychology are on the MCAT since 2015. So just know it's not required, it's just helpful. So if you have a psych minor, or you're okay self-studying for that, that's fine too. Any of the other health professions, usually like nursing, PA, PT, OT, they're going to expect additional coursework, anatomy, physio, micro. That's typically in addition to what you see here. Some nursing schools don't care about OChem, same with PA, OChem and physics. It depends. You always have to check with individual schools. So this is just to give you, I'll get to you in a second. This is just to give you an example of the average GPAs. So it's pretty high for all health professions. All health professions are competitive. Med school is the most competitive in terms of metrics. 3.7 is the national average to get accepted. And then the MCAT is a 511, which is around, I think, the 85th percentile. So it's out of 528. So our students typically do better than the national average for MCAT, which is a 512. So I always tell students, aim for the 512 and above. That will put you in a nice position. I'd say 3536 is okay for UC San Diego students just because we're a really strong institution, it's rigorous. It's going to be the MCAT that really you need to work on, and that's why you really need to understand what your timeline is when applying. So again, remember when I showed you the piece of the pie, this is also kind of going into a little bit more detail about getting experience. I typically tell students, are there any freshmen or sophomores here? Okay, great. So for freshmen, I would say, the most important thing is lay down the foundation. You really want to do well academically. That is the most important thing. Very hard to get out from under if you don't do well. I prioritize your academics, especially this first quarter. I want you to transition. It's super fast-paced. 11 weeks, it's high volume, it's hard classes. So really take your time doing really well and laying down that foundation. Winter quarter, I want you to start thinking about how can I get involved. Look for student orgs that you're interested in. Pre-health student orgs, cultural orgs, any other orgs you want to be involved in, because again, you'll need a leadership position at some point. The sooner you get started, the sooner you can build that relationship with the other orgs so you can get into a leadership position at some point.
If you're a leader of a club that
Speak a little bit louder so
Sorry.
people can hear you.
If you're a leader of a club that is not, it doesn't have to do with anything medical or science or academic at all, is that still something?
Absolutely, that's totally fine. The leadership is really just about showing that you've run something, you've been in charge of something, you ran an event, or you oversaw, it says a lot. You learn so much as a leader. You become more mature. It's really easy. That's what they want to see. They're really looking for people that are reflected and are mature.
I've heard of the need to volunteer, and I do not see it in the list of the extracurricular.
Oh yes, clinical healthcare experience.
That is to be volunteering.
Yes. So clinical healthcare, so that's also freshman year, I would start looking into doing things this summer. So as freshmen, you really only have, if you're going to be on the standard timeline of when you want to apply to med school, you really only have 2 summers to maximize that time, because your third summer, your junior year, you're studying for the MCAT. That's usually what's happening. So really start thinking about, what am I going to do this summer? If you're going to go back home, or if you're from here, just make sure you look for volunteer opportunities wherever you're going to be. But oftentimes you need to be looking soon. So just keep that in mind, look for deadlines. I'd say at least in January, be looking for stuff for summer. And again, you want to volunteer at a hospital. Volunteering at a hospital is only like 4 hours a week. It's really not much. That's why you want to start early, because you want to accrue a good 200 to 300 hours, which typically takes a good year and a half to do, because you can only volunteer so much. Research, is anyone doing research or interested? Okay, so research is not required, but I highly recommend it. We're a research institution. There's so many opportunities available to you to get in. It's also so connected to medicine. You'll learn something about yourself, whether you like it or not. It will really help you develop other types of skills. So I encourage you to look for research positions. You can look on Handshake, you can look on our Facebook page. There's Real Portal, there's all different resources to find research opportunities. Service I kind of mentioned, absolutely necessary. Do something with a community you care about, a community that has low resources, disadvantaged, some sort of vulnerable population, whether you're tutoring, you're helping the homeless, helping refugees, anything like that. It doesn't matter. There's so many more that I haven't even listed. We have a list, and if anyone's interested in that list, I can send it to you afterwards. Just put your email on here and I can give you the link to the resource list of how to get involved in these types of opportunities. There's plenty of them that aren't included on the list, but it's a good starting place. I always say pick a community you care about. Don't just try to put something like, oh, it's a checkbox, I need to do something, for to get into med school. You really want to do something that means something to you. And then I talked about leadership. The other thing I want to talk about is really finding mentors. So this is really important. It's important to get a letter of recommendation for med school. You need 4 to 6. That's a lot of letters. Part of why students get a lot of letters, the strong students that I see who get in, is because they do a lot. They do a lot. They're involved in a lot. So they know a lot of people. And they end up getting fairly strong letters. Generally, you need 2 science letters from a science professor, 1 from a non-science professor. So non-science is anything that's not biology, chemistry, physics, or math. That's specifically what they're talking about. Here are some ways to get to know your professors. I recommend going to office hours, participating in class. We have this thing called Coffee or Dine with a Prof. How many have heard of that? Awesome. How many have used it? Okay. Yeah, so you really want to do that. I'd say save the Dine one for someone you really, really want to get to know and spend time with, because that's, you only get one of those a quarter. It's a longer amount of time too. So definitely use those to get to know professors. I always say look for mentors. Don't look for, oh, I need someone to write me a letter one day. You really should get to know them like you would get to know a friend. And it goes both ways. You get to know them and they get to know you.
Do you get 1 coffee and 1 dime, or a coffee or a dime?
You should get 2 coffees and 1 dime, but one, they run out, so you really need to get them sooner than later. 2, and you get these at your college. And 2, they won't give them to you until you set the date. So really thinking about who you want to set that date with. Also, just know when you're scheduling this is your meeting, meaning don't expect someone to run this for you. If you invite someone to coffee or dinner, make sure you're prepared to ask them questions. Do your research on them, Google them, read their bio. Did they publish a book? Read part of it. Do something that will give you a lot of information. So it helps you ask them questions. The more you know about them, the easier it is to ask them some questions, right? And also you obviously have to share a little bit about yourself as well. The main thing too is really making sure you give them something to write about. What I mean is you need to do something, solve a problem, make a process easier. You have to impress them in some way for them to write you a strong, compelling letter of recommendation. The reason why I really emphasize this is because I'll have seniors that come to me, they're ready, they're good, they're strong applicants, and then they'll say, I don't know anyone, and I can't help you at that point. You have to build the relationship before you can earn the right to ask them for the letter. So spend time doing that now and identify who you want to get to know. It's not just about you getting an A in the class. It's about what else have you done for this person that impressed them in some way. If someone's enthusiastic and saying they actually ask you, hey, I want to write you a letter, that's a good sign. That's a really good sign that you've done something to impress them, if they're offering without you asking. But this school, I'm sure you've noticed, it's super packed on campus, right? Like we're at 39,000 right now, so it's even more important to spend your time getting to know professors. So how can we help? So the purpose of what I do and what the program I run does is we're really trying to help you become competitive applicants wherever you want to go. It's not just med, even though that's what I'm talking about. It could be nursing, it could be PA, dentistry, pharmacy, vet, any of those things, public health. But I want you to see us as your GPS. So tell me where you want to go, I will route you. I'll get you there, depending on where you're at specifically. Everyone's at a little bit of a different place. So if for some reason you get stuck, you get lost, usually it's around the OCHEM series, then we can reroute you and find you a way. There's always a way. It just might take longer. It might be a different route. If you really want to do this, there's definitely, it's just about taking the time to be the most competitive. So how can we help? So there's lots of different ways. One is advising. I think that's the biggest way I'm going to talk about first. We can help you with the prereqs, creating your 4-year timeline, talking to you about how to get service, leadership, all these things we already talked about. And then also when it's time to apply, we have a big event I'm going to talk about in a second. But the main thing is that we can help you identify gaps in your application. So I can look, what have you done? What classes have you taken? What are your metrics? Here's what I see is missing. And then we can also suggest ways to strengthen your application as well. So advising, this is how we do advising. We have email, quick questions, send us an email. If it's a really long, extensive question, I would not recommend the email. Come into drop-in advising. We have professional advisors like myself that does drop-in. We also have peer advisors who are also pre-health students who are usually juniors or seniors, and they know a lot as well about how to prepare. And they might be able to give more insight into the courses or the professors or things like that. Also, we do have appointments, but they are only for juniors and seniors. So if you're junior standing in your second year, you would be eligible for an appointment. It's 30 minutes, and you can make that on Handshake. It's ucsd.joinhandshake.com. How many of you are familiar with Handshake? Okay, awesome. So that's where you schedule appointments. For the pre-health appointments, they go fast. Check between 8 and 10 on Friday morning. We release them just for the next week. And then if you can't get them then, you have to wait the next Friday. But they get filled very quickly, so I recommend treating it like first pass and really waiting, refreshing until you find an appointment. So the trifecta of advising, we have different advising. I mentioned the peers, the staff, and the third one is we do have a med and pharmacy school. So we work with our first year med students and our first or second year pharmacy students to provide advising and give insight from the other side. Like, what would they have done differently? How did they get in? What did they do? What did their application look like? So I recommend talking to all of us. Everyone can really give you some solid advice and help you. So we have lots of opportunities for advising. The biggest thing for the juniors, yes?
Question. Okay, so we're talking about all this, and does this go for? Let me put it this way: if you're undergrad here, does that mean that you have a better or not as good of a shot of getting into med school here rather than somewhere else?
So there's no direct linkage, but if you look at the numbers, yes, all of the med schools, out of all the med schools, UCSD takes most of our students.
Okay, great.
But I would never say that there's like a priority. My guess is that a lot of the letters come from the med school because they're doing research with them. So, it's kind of this familiarity thing. You know these people, you know these letter writers. But if you do look at the numbers, which is on our website, you'll see that UCSD School Med takes the highest amount of any school of our students. So for the juniors and seniors, anyone, and freshmen and sophomores, it's good to know about this, but you don't need to do this year, it's too early. But every year we offer a med school application clinic, and the date is, can you see that? It's Sunday, April 5th, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. PCE, save the date. This is PC, not this room, but it's that way. But this is really important, especially if you're applying in the next cycle or two. So we'll talk about the actual application and walk you through it page by page. It's really long, and it would surprise a lot of people that how much work goes into these applications. So remember I told you there's like 52,000 plus applications a year. So work and activities, we'd go over all those things, how to fill it out, personal essay, interviewing, letters. School selection is really important, picking the schools that you're actually viable for, not just the ones you want to go to. And so it involves doing a lot of research. So this will, by the end of this session, which is a 4-hour session on a Sunday, so there should be no reason you can't attend this because there aren't any classes on that day. But you will know if you're ready to apply, and if you're not, you'll know what it takes to be ready. So I definitely recommend going to this. It fills up, it's free, but it fills up and we have a capacity issue. So just be aware of that. This is the timeline. So if anyone's applying this year, this is what it would look like. You would apply, you're going to actually submit before you graduate. So let's say you're a senior, you're applying to med school this cycle, this coming June. You're not going to wait for your spring grades to post on your transcript. It's rolling admissions. What that means is they're not waiting. There are deadlines, but you need to see it as like it's first come, first served. You want to be in front of the queue so you're reviewed as soon as possible. So you submit actually sometime in the month of June. So it's probably before you graduate or maybe after. It just has to be within the month of June. Then you'll get your secondaries between July and September. Secondaries are really just extra questions schools will ask about why do you want to go to this school, or tell me more about this experience. And then interviews are anywhere between September and February, maybe even March. And then you will know by April 30th. And then you'll start med school depending on which school, July, August, or September. So that's the timeline. The reason why we recommend a gap year is because you're interviewing during your gap year. Otherwise, you'd be interviewing during your senior year. That's really hard to do on a quarter system in general. So this is why we recommend the one gap year. You're going to take your MCAT the September of your senior year, so that's not on here. And then you have that whole year, your senior year, to prep and get everything lined up, and then you submit in June. Does that make sense? Okay. So for the freshmen and sophomores, if you are interested, we teach a class. The class is really great. It's new. The application is actually open. I think just go down our Facebook page. It's for freshmen who started, I can't remember all the details, but fall 17, if you were a fall 17 freshman start, you can take it. If you're a new junior transfer, you can take it. And then basically you need a GPA. So if you're a freshman right now, it doesn't work, but you can take it in the spring if you're a freshman right now. So we offer it twice, and we walk you through in detail. We come up with a 4-year plan with you. Again, we're like your GPS. We see how you are. It's a really good class to decide, do I really want to do this, or am I really still thinking about it? It's a way to figure out ruling it in or ruling it out. But we also have great guest speakers. We have people from hospitals coming to talk, someone from Kaplan Test Prep coming to talk about the MCAT. We'll walk you through your 4-year timeline. We'll have the first-year med student panel. We'll also have senior student panel for students who are applying in this cycle. It's an awesome class. Highly recommend it. Again, check on our Facebook page. Other places to go for resources. If you can't get advising, it's healthbeat.ucsd.edu. It's healthbeat like heartbeat, but health. And you can also email us at healthbeat@ucsd.edu. We have a drop-in advising calendar. This is also what you can find on our website, and you can see what our availability is. So any type of advising is on this calendar. It changes weekly, so it'd be staff advising, peer advising, med school advising, pharmacy, student advising, all of that is on this calendar. Facebook, I highly recommend this too for everyone to follow this. It's at our username is at healthbeat.ucsd. The reason is we publish volunteering opportunities, service opportunities, research opportunities, jobs, really relevant articles, all kinds of things that are on here that are really, really important. It's kind of like a newsletter. And then also on the Facebook page is a centralized event page of any type of pre-health related event happening on our campus. So we kind of centralize it from all the different student orgs, everything that's happening, and put it in one place so you can just look at that. And it's everything from like interviewing to panels to speakers, those kinds of things. So again, here's our info, contact information. I want to open it up for any questions. We have about 15 minutes, and then you are going to be heading out that way to get your lunch, to go to the colleges.
Yes. So you said it was recommended to take anatomy. I know some medical schools require that. Did you want us to take it before we take the MCAT, though?
So anatomy is generally not required, but it's helpful. It's very helpful. If you talk to first-year med students, they're going to tell you it would have been nice to have some anatomy. If you're going to take it, I would probably take it before the MCAT. But we don't offer anatomy here. So we offer it in extension, which is more expensive. You can take it at a community college as well, but sometimes that's tricky with your schedule. But yes, I would definitely recommend it if you have space for it. I know like it's such a tight timeline that yeah.
In terms of research, I'm just wondering, say a student is taking a course from some professor, they like the professor, they look at their research and they find it interesting. How formal is the process where that student could then do some research for the professor? I'm used to it being like a research assistantship, you get paid, it's a big deal. Okay, can you do it kind of casually?
Usually, so research on this campus, usually they want you to commit for like a good year or 2 sometimes. So I would say it's pretty serious.
But for example, they wouldn't pay you, it's kind of
Not necessarily. So there's a lot of volunteer research positions too. You can get both paid and unpaid positions.
But they tend to like you being there for a year or 2. Is it substantial?
Substantial, absolutely, it's substantial, yes. And then it's also a good way to get a letter because you'll spend probably hundreds of hours, doing something. The other thing to think about when you're doing research is it should be productive research. There should be something that comes out of it in some way. Not necessarily a publication, but it should be making progress in some way. Otherwise, they're going to be like, well, what are you doing? Why are you? Yeah.
Does it specifically matter to med school if you're doing a research internship that has to do with what you want to do? Or can you do it, like let's say like, I don't even know an example, but does it have to be towards what you want to do in the future?
So research, I mean, that would make sense, right? But so in terms of what kind of research, I think really what interests you. I never tell students to do something to make it look good on the application. That never works. People, like admissions committees can see when you're trying to kind of piece together something. So really just doing something that you're interested in, but it's helpful to learn some lab skills and things like that. And yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people that are in all, different kinds of labs that aren't necessarily biolabs, but yeah, I would say always like lean towards doing something that is of interest to you. I would still say like service and clinical is more important than that. Unless you're going to MD PhD, in which case I would say the opposite. MD PhD is another level. They're going to expect publications and a lot of research hours. Yes?
Earlier you mentioned that the student has to be ready, and a lot of times they're not. In your experience, what are some of the ways that you've seen that they're not ready, and what have they done to?
Great question. So the question was, have I seen students that are not ready, and what did that look like, and what did they do to become ready? So usually it's students, and it's usually students who want to not take a gap year, which means you need to apply June of your junior year, which means you need to have your MCAT done January of your junior year, which means you need to have all those prereqs I listed done before then, which is almost impossible because they're layered. You can't get into, physics without calculus. You can't get into OChem without Gen Chem. You can't get into biochem without OChem. Things like that. So usually what's missing is they don't have even if they're good academically, they don't have enough experience. So, because if you're applying your June of your junior year, that's only 2 years and 2 quarters on your application of grades. That's not even a full year of upper division coursework. So that's one thing. Some people still do excellent on their MCAT, despite that. But then they don't have enough experiences. So when you get to when we're doing the application clinic, it shows there's a work and activities section. And on that section, the application asks you to fill out up to 15 work and activities. That's a lot. They're not asking you to fill out every single one, but the fact that they give you 15 spaces tells you that they're expecting you to do a significant amount of things. So I always ask students, can you fill out this 15? What have you actually done? And not just by number, also by hours. It's like if you did 20 hours here, 20 hours there, that's not that significant. I'm talking like hundreds of hours of doing different types of things that happen over the course of the year. So to me, what makes you competitive is having a lot of experiences that you grew into. It's not as much breadth as it's depth. So maybe you do a few things really well, but you've done them for the past 4 years, versus like, I did a year here doing that, or like I shadowed for 20 hours there, that kind of thing, because they're really looking for the evolution of your journey, that it started small and then over time it was built, and it makes sense that your next step is med school. So it is metrics, it is grades, MCAT score, but the other thing they lack often is letters. So students have a hard time getting letters here unless you're really involved from the beginning, because when people can see what you're capable of, you have time to build that relationship over the 3 or 4 years. That can be really helpful, and the letters are very important. They hold a lot of weight.
Would it be possible then to apply when you're a junior and not take a gap year, and then if you don't get in, apply again after a gap year?
Sure. So the question is about reapplying. We have a little saying we use, and it's take a gap, don't be a re-app. And the reason we say that is because you're scrutinized more the second time. They're going to look at you, well, why did we reject this person? Of course you can. It's there for you if you need it, just like if you need to retake the MCAT, it's there for you. But if you're not ready, you shouldn't be applying. It says something about your own ability to assess and judge where you're currently at. So I don't recommend doing that. One, it costs a lot of money. To apply to 20 schools, it's $3,000. So it's a lot. Dental school is even more. So it's one of those things you don't want to take lightly. And it's just a lot of work too. You'll have to ask for your letters again, and all that stuff. You really want to try to apply once. Sometimes people apply, they get in, they get to the interview, and that's where they don't get in, it's the interview. In that case, yeah, you can apply again. Also, I'll say is sometimes when you apply too early, you're not good enough to apply right away. You usually need to skip a cycle because you wouldn't have time to do much in that time because you think you're going to interview and then you don't get interviews and then you haven't done anything. So I think I would say it's a case-by-case basis. Occasionally I would tell a student, sure, you could try, but maybe instead of applying to 25 schools, don't apply to that many so you don't waste all that money. But typically I say apply when you're most competitive. And the average age is 24, 25 for first-year med students.
So research experience, you mean to say that during your 4-year course of undergrad school, not prior, if someone has like high school well-developed research experience, does it count or not?
So I would say that'd be amazing if someone did research in high school, but I would say, yeah, they're looking for college experience. So I wouldn't say anything that happened before that wouldn't count, but they're really they always want to see what you've most recently done. So I would say, yeah, it should be in the last 4 or 5 years.
Is there a difference in the steps you have to take for
So the question is about the difference between MD and DO. So yes, I'd say in terms of metrics, MD is the most competitive. You're talking a 3.7, a 3.64 science GPA, and like a 5.11 MCAT score. The difference with DO, it's a little bit lower GPA. It might be like a 3.5. The MCAT's lower. It's like a 5.05, which is, I'm not sure what percentile that is. But the other thing is, I don't want you to apply to DO schools because it's a backup. They don't want to know that. It should still be like, you should still understand what the philosophy of a DO is, of an osteopathic physician. You also absolutely need to shadow a DO. That's why they can tell when it's your backup. It's fine if it is, but just make sure that you do your research and you interview DOs, you shadow DOs. Ideally, you get a letter from a DO because I guarantee they're going to ask you, did you apply to MD schools? And you should have a reason why you applied to both. You do. But yeah, it's very much the same except you need that additional shadowing, the letter, and then the metrics aren't as competitive. But it's still hard. I don't want to say it's easy. It's still really. Other questions? Yes.
How many times can you apply or take the MCAT? And is it round on? Do they see all your scores?
Sure, good question. So the question is, how many times can you take the MCAT? So the MCAT, I believe it's 3 times in a year, 4 times in 2 years, 7 times in a lifetime. Hopefully you will never reach the lifetime limit. Plus it's brutal. If you've talked to anyone taking the MCAT, it's an 8-hour exam. It's a lot. You can take it once. If you take it twice, you better hope you do better, because statistically, students don't do better the second time if they take it within a certain time range. So people that take it right away after the first time, it's usually not good. You can actually void the score. I think you have 5 minutes to void it after you take it, which means you'll never see the score, so you don't know how you did, but no one knows you took it. It's like it never happened, except that you paid for it and it's on your credit card. So that is an option. Students do that when they're like, oh, I know I bombed it. I don't want the score. It's not frowned upon if you do better usually the second time. Some schools will take the average of the 2 scores, some will take the better score, some will take the most recent score, but it's hard to know. So that's another reason I say the same thing I say with when applying to med school, take the MCAT when you're ready. You should take 5 to 10 full lengths. That's why we recommend studying the summer, because when are you going to have 8-hour full length days to take a test like that? Usually the summer. So if you're not scoring well during your practice exams, that's feedback. It's telling you, maybe I need to wait. I'm not quite there. I'm going to push it. Because you're not going to miraculously score perfectly if you're not doing well on the practice exams. Test preps are really helpful, they're just really expensive. So if you can afford them, they're very helpful because they help you with strategy and how to get through. You have 1 minute to take 1 minute or maybe even less to get through a question. The way Kaplan describes the MCAT is it's 1 inch deep, meaning it's not that deep into all that science. It's more a reasoning test about science. So you need to know how to quickly read a passage, quickly rule out the wrong answers, and then decide between the last two. It's tough. Standardized tests are really tough. So yes, you can retake it. Hopefully you will.
So, I don't know if this is a good question or not, but if you study all summer for the MCAT, and then you sign up to maybe take the September test, but realize you're not ready, would you recommend finding another date within the next school year, or waiting another gap year, a whole summer, taking the summer to study again?
So are you saying if you didn't take?
Yeah, if you didn't take the exam.
I think it depends on you. I think once you're halfway there, you've been studying and you don't feel quite ready, you still have that all in your brain. It might be worth sticking it out and studying a little longer and then taking it in January. Just know January is known for being like the worst scores because of the holidays. So it doesn't mean that's going to be you, but there's just so many things going on with November and December. But that's just statistics. So yes.
Can you start med school, like, does it have to be you start in the fall, or can you start like in the winter?
No.
No.
It's only one application cycle a year, and that's why you do need a lot of planning. And you start either July, August, or September, depending on the school itself. I think we start in August, school medicine.
How long is a particular MCAT score? Let's say I
Great question.
go to school year,
Yeah, so
but I had a good score.
So an MCAT score lasts for 3 years. That's another thing to think about if you're not going to apply right away. If you know you're taking multiple gap years, that's what's tricky. It's like people want to take it close to the classes, but yet that means you need to apply sooner than later. So yeah, it's 3 years.
How many students are actually accepted into your program every year? So what's the class? Like I'm guessing you start your program in August and this class goes throughout.
How many first-year class for med students?
Like how many actual students are there?
It
Yes.
depends on the med school, but our med school is like, I think 125.
125? Okay.
That's why it's hard. It's yeah, and UCLA's, they have so many applicants. They have like 14,000 for like 150 spots maybe. So that's what we're talking about, why you need to be competitive, and that's the other reason I say, like, it's almost, to me, you need to take a gap year, because you're applying against people that have years on you, meaning maybe they did a Fulbright, or they did Teach for America, or they do other things. That's what makes them great applicants. It's not, like, you shouldn't be in a hurry to go to med school. This is the only time you're gonna have a gap year. And then the minute you graduate, you go to residency, and then you gotta pay off your loans. So you're not gonna be like traveling the world. So it's, if there's something else you wanna do, like Teach for America, Peace Corps, any of those things, or you get some sort of opportunity, take it. That would be great for your application. They're looking for mature students. Like I said, the average age is 24 to 25. I get students all the time who are like, well, I don't want to be this age when I'm going to be a doctor. And like, you're going to be that age no matter what. So you might as well be a doctor, right? So, yeah, so I wouldn't be afraid of the gap year. It can actually benefit you. Plus, like, I'm sure parents, you all know, like, there's so much maturity that happens in these years that they take, and that's reflected in the interview. So, we're out of time, so you'll need to head to the library. I hope this was helpful. If you want to, again, fill out your email if you have questions, And have a great rest of your day. Welcome. Thank you for your time.